Greetings, my name is Jedi Master and Master of the Order Daayli. We're coming to you from the planet Les-Bois today, and I wanted to reach out specifically and say that I know a lot of you on the core worlds are struggling with a potentially serious and devastating pandemic. We here on Les-Bois are taking steps to distance ourselves from each other, but during this trying time, it's important to not let our skills lapse. And so, by your request, we're coming to you with some Saber basics today, which is the start of our series on a new Jedi training manual. Today and in future videos, you're going to hear from Jedi here at the temple, and it's going to be in this format. One of us talking to you about a piece of whether it's Jedi culture, or in particular, today we're going to cover the basics of lightsaber fighting, just so that you at home across the galaxy can maintain your skills during this trying time. So we see you, we hear you here on Les-Bois, and we wanted to tell you, stay strong, trust in the Force, and make sure that you're doing your job as Jedi to protect each other and your local communities. Starting today, we're going to talk about perhaps the most important piece of a new Jedi's life, and that's their lightsaber. It's important when you're selecting a lightsaber that you select one that's good for you. Now, it's a common misconception that the saber chooses the user. That's not true. While it's true that the crystal inside is chosen by a new Force user when they journey to one of the sacred planets, such as Ilum, the saber itself is still up to the new Jedi to construct. And so what I wanted to do is talk about some examples of sabers today so that you can select one that's going to be right for you in your path on the Force. There are a number of saber manufacturers that create parts for you to create your own saber in your journey through the Force. Today I have samples from just one of them, but it is the preferred one by us here at Les-Bois. So I'm going to start and go through several of them and kind of talk about the virtues of each one, and then I'm also going to talk about why it's important to select blade length that's appropriate for you. And then this video series will continue. You'll hear about how to actually use some of these sabers, and we'll start with very basic techniques, and we'll move all the way up to some very advanced things. So we'll be coming to you so that you can continue your journey on your own, at home, on your home planet, without putting others at risk. So starting with selecting your saber, I have in my hand what's called a V2 or version 2 basic saber. Now you'll see, I'll get close to the droid so you can get a good look at it. You can see it's pretty simple. Now what's important to remember when you're selecting your saber is two things. First, the length of the saber hilt, and then the width of the saber hilt. Why this is important: with a basic V2, you've got a thinner and more lightweight handle. Now this is good for individuals who have small hands, or if you have a non-human hand grip such as a Korin or a Whiffid. These smaller, thinner handles might be good for you. They are lighter, which allows you to manipulate them easier on the back end, and they're thinner. The V2s are much thinner than any of the other versions. So if you have small hands or you don't have a lot of upper body strength, this is the hilt for you. Now you can see this one is very basic. There's no ornamentation, just a simple color that indicates the crystal inside of it on the switch, and that's it. It's simple silver. These do come in black, and you can get ornamentation on them in either gold, or if it's black, you can get silver in the hilts. Now that's it for customization. It's just these, and you can get a saber clip to hang it on your belt like I have mine stored here, but that's it. So what you gain in lightweight maneuverability, you lose in customization. So that's important to keep in mind when you're selecting your saber. The other thing is length. Most lightsaber techniques are done two-handed, with a two-handed grip. Now occasionally you'll get some one-handed stuff, especially in Form 2 or Makashi, but for the most part, saber users have two hands on their grip. So it's important to make sure that you select a saber that you can comfortably put both of your hands on. By comparison, this is what they call a V3, and you'll notice it's quite a bit thicker, and it has a fluted piece of ornamentation here. And this particular hilt is designed for one-handed use. So if you have quite a bit of upper body strength, or you're a Makashi style saber fighter, it's okay to get a shorter blade. But just be aware that what you gain in a little bit of weight off the end, that balance does transfer, especially for a stunt saber that's not an actual lightsaber. You get some drag on the tip. So for this, it comes with the same color customization. You can get an upgraded type of switch. You can get a clip on it, which I'll show on a different saber. The differences between the V2 and the V3 are simply size. However, if you want to do a staff saber or a double-ended saber, I personally highly recommend the V2. This is two of the more ornate version 2 sabers that I talked about earlier, put together to make a staff. It is much easier to manipulate with the thinner handles. So if you're looking for a double-ended saber, I highly recommend the V2s. You lose quite a bit of customizability, but you do get this opportunity to really move your hands up and down smoothly without a lot of things in the middle. Makes it a lot easier to use. V4 sabers are where you get to a lot of customizability. I have 2 examples of those today. This one belongs to Padawan Limphao. He couldn't be here today, but he lent his saber to this purpose. I get here a good picture of the droid. You can also notice that here on this saber, there are vents. Now, starting with the V3 and V4s, you can get vents. Now, it's important to consider your vents carefully because this is hot. If the saber were on, this would be dangerous to hold. My own personal saber also has vents, which you can see here. And so if we were to touch them during a duel, we would be hurt. You'll also notice that both of these sabers have a place that's fluted. So you'll also notice that both of these sabers have a place where it's fluted, here and here. Now this allows you to have a thinner grip, much like the version 2. So if you're gonna do a lot of two-handed, it's important to be carefully consider where your flutes are when selecting your saber handle. And finally, you can get really ornate with your saber. This is the lightsaber of my master, Master Hawk. He is no longer with us, unfortunately. He has passed into the Force, but I inherited his saber when I learned of his fate. You'll notice it's very ornate through the handle. He had this for a lot of years as he went throughout the galaxy creating peace and justice. My master was a Wookiee, so he used this one-handed. So these kind of extra ornamented bits up top did not inhibit his ability to use it. But I, as a Twi'lek, if I attempted to use this, there wouldn't be enough room for my hands, and it's also quite thick. So it's important to remember that when you're selecting your saber that you do something that your hands can use effectively. The second thing to consider, especially when getting a stunt blade, is how long the blade lengths are. Now, for Padawan who are practicing, and even Jedi Masters who are practicing, the blades come in 4 typical lengths: 16 inches, 24 inches, 36 inches, and 16, 24, 32, 36, and 40. Now, those are quite a range, and I wouldn't recommend a 16-inch blade. It's meant for small children. So if you have younglings practicing at home, perhaps an initiate handle or a short handle with a really small blade is appropriate. I wouldn't recommend a 24 unless you're short of stature like Master Yoda, or you know, an Ugnaught or a Jawa. They just don't have the length and the reach. 24-inch blades are typically put on the end of staff handles to make pikes. So if you're either short of stature, or you want to use a polearm style lightsaber, then those are things you can get. I personally recommend for almost any new Jedi a 32-inch stunt blade. Now, this is shorter than your traditional lightsaber, which comes in at 36, but the 32-inch does 2 things. One, it moves that balance back to your hands, which you really want when you're practicing with a stunt blade, because an actual lightsaber doesn't have any weight in the handle. So you want to mimic that as much as possible. The other thing it does is it takes undue stress off of your hand, your wrist, and your elbow. So there are muscles in your arm, and especially tendons along the top, that if you're using a blade that has balance too far to the tip that's uncomfortable for your body style, you can really pull these forward when you're doing maneuvers such as orbitals, and that puts a lot of stress on your elbow. We've had a lot of Jedi hurt themselves by trying to use a blade that was too long for them. If you are used to swinging sabers or any other kind of implement, or if you're a little bit more defined in your upper body strength, then a 36-inch standard blade is right for you. Or if you're going to exclusively use your saber two-handed, that's a good way to go, is that 36-inch blade. If you're of a larger stature, like Master Hawk was as a Wookiee, perhaps that 40-inch blade is where it's at for you. If you have a lot of upper body strength or you're quite tall, you can get away with using that longest blade in your saber in order to extend your natural reach even further. So this is the first step, selecting which saber is right for you. I have strong personal feelings. For me, my personal blades are V4s, and I typically select a 36 or a 32-inch stunt blade. For my staff saber, which I showed earlier, they are 32s exclusively. That extra length really drags the ground and interrupts your practice. And since a real lightsaber would just go through it, you really want that shorter blade on a staff saber. For you, making sure that you select the right blade for your purposes is really what's important. Thank you so much for tuning into this first holovid on how to select your saber. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to hold it and different grip styles. And then we'll move forward into how to keep your body balanced and then how to execute the 4 basic strikes. So thank you very much, and may the Force be with you, always.